Brian Alexander, Chief Operating Officer, Head Bottle Washer, and Cedar Assassin. We can't focus on one thing. We can't focus on just cedar trees. Yes, getting to kill cedar trees gets me out of bed a lot in the mornings. But it's not just the cedar trees. Removing the cedar trees is just another piece in the overall puzzle of regenerating our landscape, regenerating our prairies back to maximum health. Who's here? Who's here at Soil Health U? Most of the speakers that are listed on the sheet they seem like they're reformed dirt churners. And that's okay. But we forget that soil health isn't just a problem for farmers. Soil health is a problem for ranchers. Soil health is as much of a problem for ranchers as it is for farmers, even more so, because poor range management is harder to recover than being able to drag tools through your dirt with pulling a tractor and no-tilling, or changing from a conventional tillage to a no-tillage. It's easier to reverse that style of management and start rebuilding soil health than it is to reverse improper grazing land management with cattle. So I think in the future, I would encourage the High Plains Journal and people behind Soil Health U to look at more ways to attract ranchers, people that aren't farmers, guys that don't own tractors, guys that don't till soil, guys that just have cows, cattlemen, stockmen. We need to bring them into the fold and get more of them on the train of soil health. I'm not just worried about what's going to happen in the next 2 years on the ranch and trying to develop soil health and livestock patterns. I'm trying to look 10 and 15 years down the road and take all of my $10 an hour manual labor tasks and outsource them to the cloud. Outsource them to that supercomputer everybody carries around in their pocket, outsource them to the cloud, so it frees up more of my labor hours that I can spend on $100 an hour work instead of doing $10 an hour manual labor. The first phase of the infrastructure build out to automate the ranch is actually coming in the next 3 weeks. We're going to be deploying a system designed and provided by Cisco Meraki to put wireless internet on the whole ranch, and we're going to have we're going to have cameras that are located out on the ranch that are Meraki cameras. Their cameras actually do some very interesting things. They can track movement. They store the data, and it's stored based on movement. So if there's no movement in the camera, it's just going to tell you nothing happened between this hour and this hour. And what that's going to allow me to do is, if I point the camera at the paddock where the cattle are grazing, the software will be able to generate a heat map based on animal activity over time and overlay that onto a map. My friends at Cisco Meraki are working with my friends at Pasture Map to where Pasture Map and Meraki can work together through an API, so the heat map data that's generated by the Meraki app and the Meraki software can be imported directly to Pasture Map, and I can see on Pasture Map a heat map of where my cattle have been grazing while they were in that paddock. Having the cameras, I'm planning to put 2 on a portable trailer with a portable power source. So I have 2 independent cameras that have about 350 degrees of motion. So almost anywhere I can look, I could probably put 2 cameras on it to look. So I'll primarily have one looking at water and have the other one looking mostly out over the paddock. And until we get the complete infrastructure built out, we're going to have to move things around, which is why we're going to build a trailer and move the primary camera and primary access point around the ranch. So after we have this wonderful camera, after we have these cameras deployed in the pasture, the next thing that we can do is we can move into Bluetooth tagging technology. We can there are low-cost Bluetooth tags that are also RFID tags that we could put on the cattle's ear tag to allow the Cisco Meraki camera system to better track the animal's movement through the pasture. We're also looking at, for lack of a better term, let's just call it a Fitbit for cows. And if you're familiar with a Fitbit for normal people, it's a device that monitors your health. It monitors, it'll monitor your heart rate and make sure you're healthy, and it knows where you're at, knows how far you've traveled and how fast you got there. Imagine how it could change your management if you could take all of that information about not just one cow, but about 200 cattle and know how they've moved and where they've spent their time and what they've ate in the pasture, and have that on a georeference grid where you take your phone back out and say, I'm in the area that had the most animal impact over the last 4 days. What am I looking at here? And even past the Fitbit for cows. Now we're talking about deploying hardware on animals, so the cost has to come way down. And if I've learned anything in my experience with technology is the longer it's around, the more the cost comes down. So it's just simply a matter of time and waiting and developing the technology and building the infrastructure to where when the technology that I want, the equipment that I do want and need is cost effective, I'll be ready to deploy it, I'll be ready to use it. The end goal would be, I want to take all the fences out of the ranch, move towards a collar or some kind of device that every animal wears that's a combination of health monitor and a geofence system. And what I mean by a geofence system is I want to be able to go into my phone or my computer on an app and basically draw a box in a pasture, and that box is where the geofence system will keep my livestock. It's a pretty new technology, and the way it works is it has obviously it has an onboard memory chip, an onboard GPS chip, but it also has a speaker, and it has it'll deliver small electric shock. So the animal approaches the boundary, the collar gives an alert saying, hey, move away from here, or makes a loud noise that, stresses the animal away from that area. If the animal continues to move toward the boundary of the area, the collar will shock the animal, and will shock the animal periodically until it returns back to the geofenced area. So the possibilities with being able to know exactly where your cattle are on the ranch, know how long they've been there, and then be able to move them somewhere else, and be able to do that all from the smartphone that everybody carries around in the pocket, blows my mind. And I'm extremely excited to think about the future of cattle ranching and agriculture with the technology that's becoming available to us. In addition to all the new technologies that I'm looking forward to deploying on the ranch with Cisco Meraki and the heat mapping and pasture map, once we have wireless access across the whole ranch, that brings in a whole new realm of possibilities for other sensors. We can design and build fence sensors that'll accurately measure the voltage on a fence. We can deploy water sensors inside the tank that's a static pressure sensor. It doesn't rely on any kind of mechanical indication that would give me that would tell me how much water's in my tank. I could put pressure switches on all my pressure water lines to make sure the health of my water system is okay. The possibilities for monitoring once you have wireless deployed over a wide area, I think are going to be literally limitless in the future. Things that we should be monitoring anyway, like rainfall, soil moisture infiltration rate into the soil, deep soil moisture. We should automate all of these things. There's no reason that we need to be spending 10 hours a day going out and digging holes and looking for earthworms and checking creeks and tanks and measuring a fence. There's no reason at all we need to do that. We need to transition from the cowboy laborer mentality and thinking that we have to work from sun up to sundown or we're not doing anything. We have to think about smarter ways to deploy our hours and automate tasks that should be automated. You can also find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Red Hills Rancher. I encourage you to do so.